Now we're going to look at some kids here. These are kids, this is called Camp Quest, and these were kids in Ohio and also in Ontario.
Do you believe in God?
No. When I say I don't believe in God, they say, well, you should because God is great. Sometimes I tell my...
So these are examples of Zerotheist kids. Zerotheist is like an atheist, but it's a smart person, a smart atheist. Because you go in America right now, unless you go to the best schools, if you say that you're atheist, people think you're a bad person because it has to do with the lack of education. So you can say you're a Zerotheist, and that's a more neutral term. So these are kids that went to a camp. You go to a camp each summer, and they learn about morals and how to be a good person. When you understand that these come from mythology, so you have to develop your own sense of morals. So you're going to watch them, and they're going to ask him how he gets his morals, and then we'll explain in the video how you can get morals from energy.
Do you believe in God?
No. When I say I don't believe in God, they say, well, you should because God is great.
Sometimes I tell my friends that I don't believe in God, and they say, well, if you don't believe in God, you're going to hell when you die.
They're just like, you don't believe in God? How can you not believe in God? You can't be good without God.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about secularism.
These young people at Camp Quest in Niagara Falls, Ontario, called themselves freethinkers. The summer camp was started by Chris and Kathy Meidel to promote secularism, separation of church and state.
Me, I believe that there is no God, but they all believe that there is God. So I am saying I don't care what you think. I think that there is no God. It doesn't matter.
Without God in your life as such, how do you develop your moralities, how to see the world? What is that based on?
It's like, if you want to be treated nice, you should treat other people nice, not because you're going to go to hell if you don't.
We should only treat people the way that we would want to be treated.
I will obey God.
No.
Okay, so in the old days, they used to tell the children, they would say, if you have to obey God or else you're going to go to hell if you're a bad person. Or if you're a good, then you're going to go to heaven. So that's just something that's been passed along to children over the last 5,000 years. So we're going to explain the new way of explaining morals. So if somebody asks you how are you a moral person, you can't just say, well, God told me so, or something like that. So again, the morals, these are examples of moral symbols. This is a plus sign, which means a reaction. They're combining this reaction arrow, which means there's a reaction. Okay, now we're going to watch, these are Swedish kids. This is what they teach kids in Sweden.
Jag tror i alla fall på Gud, men det kanske inte andra gör. Jag tror att han finns. Att jag har ingen Gud. Jag har ingen Gud. Det är sant. Alltså jag tror att Gud finns. Men alltså jag tror inte på att han är en gubbe som sitter uppe i himlen direkt. Jag tror att Gud är typ som en kraft.
So you see how she says, I believe God is like a force? So that's kind of what we're teaching here. So this is, when you see G, this is what's called the energy of God. Is what they would believe in the old days. Now we say it's the energy of Gibbs. So when we talk about forces, he's saying, I think God is like a force. He's talking about these bosons, which is, the heat is like the boson. That's why it's red color. So when we did the reaction, same way light is like a boson. And a fermion, remember, is something you can touch, like a fur on a giraffe. So when she says, I believe God is like a force, she's trying to say that she says, I believe in bosons and fermions, but she doesn't, nobody's taught her that yet.
Jag tror på Gud. han var ju så himla gammal så han har ju dött. Han skapar alla människor. Gud, han tar ju emot alla människor när de dör. Så att liksom...
We're going to talk about that too. He says what God receives everybody when you die. So in America they teach you, when you're young they'll say, when you die you go to heaven in the clouds. We're going to teach you the new way of understanding that.
Han är i himlen hela tiden liksom. Han har ju varit där ganska länge nu. Alltså jag tror inte på det. Jag har ju ändå aldrig sett någon. Jag tror att han finns, men ingen vet ju att han finns eller inte. Och så, nej, jag har inte heller sett Gud någon gång.
So now we just talked about how the girl believed that God was like a force. So these are the forces right here. Whenever a force moves something per unit time, you know how we did the experiment and the force of gravity moved the rock. And then we had an experiment where we had electromagnetic force. So whenever a force moves an object per unit time, you get what's called Gibbs energy. And this, whenever you see the G, it does it. So the old time they used to teach the children that God did everything. Now we teach children that what's called Gibbs energy did everything. So the G right here means Willard Gibbs. So instead of thinking God is something that was written down through the prophets, we measure it through energy. Okay, so here's two examples. We're going to explain more physics and chemistry, explain the passions without using God or spirits. This is Burning Man that happened last year in Nevada. They go there every year and they have a party. So they're all having a good time. And Carl Jung says that when two people meet, it's like a chemical reaction. So everybody see here? We have A is Charlotte, B is Edward, and C is the captain. So when the three people come together, okay. So this, you see right here it says, when two people meet, it's like a chemical reaction, and both people are transformed. So this is Goethe, he's the guy who studied the skull. This is A, Charlotte, it's like a chemical, B is the captain, and B is Edward, C is the captain. So when they all go into this state where they all live, they all have different reactions together.
You know how sometimes you go to bake a cake, but your bananas have all gone rotten, your utensils have rusted, you trip and pour all of your baking soda into the vinegar jug, and then your oven explodes? My friend, you and your chemical reactions have fallen victim to enthalpy and entropy, and boy are they forces to be reckoned with.
To interject on this last point, wherein the speaker says you and your chemical reactions, which is very subtle but very important. What he is referring to is monism, which means that just as in the video where the guy trips over the table and spills the baking soda on his head, the enthalpy and entropy factors apply to him as a person just as they do to oxygen and hydrogen reacting together to form water, or as shown in the video, baking soda and vinegar reacting to form carbon dioxide, meaning one set of principles, mono meaning one, governs all of nature, which equates to the effect that entropy, which means heat or freedom, or enthalpy, which means bonds or security, is the new moral compass of belief systems, which can be contrasted with the old 17th century views of Descartes, who said that humans are types of animal machines, but the one thing that differentiates humans from animals is that humans have a soul located in their pineal gland put there by God. Hence, two powers. One, the powers of physics and chemistry govern humans, but also a separate power from God located in the pineal gland governs human moral nature. Hence, dual, which means two, or dualism.
Now your reactants are all products. So what are these E words, and what's their big idea? Let's start with enthalpy.
You see these words right here? We're going to watch them in the slide coming up here. So when we get to this slide, this is Frederick Rossini. Everybody knows what 9/11 is?
Yes.
Okay, so on 9/11, the terrorists bombed the Twin Towers. So then we had to start thinking about our security, our national security. So people it got to be harder to go to the airport. They started searching us more. So we had an increase in security, which is this enthalpy term, which we're going to talk about in the video. And we had a decrease in freedom. We're not allowed, there's more cameras watching us. And so now this entropy right here is what we're going to see in the video. Okay, so now let everybody watch. This is going to explain to kids how this enthalpy, which means national security, and entropy, which means freedom to move around and do things what you want.
An increase or decrease of energy during a chemical reaction. Every molecule has a certain amount of chemical potential energy stored within the bonds between its atoms.
Okay, so remember, these are molecules, and there's bonds between us.
Chemicals with more energy are less stable, and thus more likely to react. Let's visualize the energy flow in a reaction, the combustion of hydrogen and oxygen, by playing a round of crazy golf. Our goal is to get a ball, the reactant, up a small rise and down the other much steeper slope.
Notice how the speaker says goal in respect to reactants and products. This gets into a sense of purpose, or what one plans to do with one's wild and precious existence.
Where the hill goes up, we need to add energy to the ball. And where it goes down, the ball releases energy into its surroundings.
To elaborate, by way of a real-time social example, we have here the model where Bill Gates represents the ball, shown here in 1970 at Lakeside High School with his friend Paul Allen working on the school's teletype machines, wherein they come up with the idea for a software company. That is an idea or a good thing to do. The so-called initial state of the reaction. In the middle is what's called the activation energy barrier, and represents the hurdles that must be surmounted to realize the idea into a goal or a sense of purpose. Shown here is the Microsoft original 12 members in 1978, with Bill Gates and Paul Allen shown at the bottom. Technically what is called the activation complex or transition state molecule at the height of the activation energy barrier, which 45 years later is comprised of a corporation that employs some 18,000 people and is the world's second most valuable brand according to Forbes.
The whole represents the product, or result of the reaction. When the reaction period ends, the ball is inside the hole, and we have our product, water.
With Microsoft ubiquitous worldwide, we might say the ball is in the hole.
This, like when our oven exploded, is an exothermic reaction, meaning that the chemical's final energy is less than its starting energy, and the difference has been added to the surrounding environment as light and heat.
To elaborate on this, by way of a scaled-up example, the transformation of ATP, adenosine triphosphate, to either ADP, adenosine diphosphate, or AMP, adenosine monophosphate, are both exothermic processes. That is, the hydrolysis of ATP to either ADP or AMP releases heat. Lysis, from the Latin meaning to loosen, refers to the premise that water loosens the ATP molecule such that it allows for cleavage of the three high-energy phosphate bonds, each cleavage producing ADP, and in turn two cleavages producing AMP. Likewise, the Gates family can be compared to ATP, or Bill, Mary, Bill family molecule, BMP. And specifically in December of 1974, the Altair 8800 computer was released with an 8-inch floppy disk running on an Intel 8080 central processing unit. And shortly thereafter, young Bill told his parents that, or discussed with him about his plans to drop out of Harvard at the age of 20 to form a software company that would write software for this computer. His parents, originally having had plans for him to be a lawyer, Bill Gates too, being a lawyer himself, were supportive of him after seeing how much Gates wanted to start the company. Hence the cleavage of Bill from the BM parental structure via social lysis or social loosening in this process of BMP to BM was exothermic. That is, the cleavage of the high energy Bill Gates 2, Bill Gates 3 bond was exothermic and released heat. Conversely, had his parents not been supportive of his plans to drop out of Harvard, the cleavage of the bond might not have been exothermic.
We can also play out the opposite type of reaction, an endothermic reaction, where the final energy is greater than the starting energy.
Had Bill Jr.'s parents not been supportive of his plans to start the software company and, in turn, withdrawn funding from his endeavors, the lysis process may or could have resulted to have been endothermic and thereby absorb heat from the surroundings into their system and possibly destroyed their family.
That's what we were trying to achieve by baking our cake. The added heat from the oven would change the chemical structure of the proteins in the eggs and various compounds in the butter. So that's enthalpy.
Action.
Okay, so enthalpy is the energy that you have when you have bonds between people. So like Ricky and you two have family bond together, right? Say the energy of that bond is measured by enthalpy.
As you might suspect, exothermic reactions are more likely to happen than endothermic ones because they require less energy to occur. But there's another independent factor that can make reactions happen: entropy. Entropy measures a chemical's randomness.
To interject, the person in the video defining entropy as a measure of randomness is oversimplifying things correctly. Entropy is defined from a number of perspectives, each with its own peculiar flavor. The original definition, however, is always the go-to source, shown here, as well as on this female science student's arm tattooed, and is defined as the equivalence value of all uncompensated transformations measured by the negative n, which is the measure of change in the universe.
Here's an enormous pyramid of golf balls. Its ordered structure means it has low entropy. However, when it collapses, we have chaos everywhere, balls bouncing high and wide, so much so that some even go over the hill. This shift to instability, or higher entropy, can allow reactions to happen.
To elaborate via illustration in respect to the speaker's comment that ordered structures have lower measures of entropy, on the left is an illustration from Stephen Hawking's 1996, an illustrated brief history of time, where he explains that when a person reads a book, their neurological entropy decreases by some 2 million units, which is equivalent to the effect that when a child reads a book such as Richard Dawkins' The God Delusion, before they reach adulthood, their entropy as a person will be at a lower level when they begin to react in society, which will facilitate their reaction.
As with the golf balls, In actual chemicals, this transition from structure to disorder gets some reactants past the hump and lets them start a reaction. You can see both enthalpy and entropy at play when you go to light a campfire to cook dinner. Your match adds enough energy to activate the exothermic reaction of combustion, converting the high-energy combustible material in the wood to lower-energy carbon dioxide and water. Entropy also increases and helps the reaction.
To give an example of entropy, which is right here, measure the amount of freedom we have in society. So everybody, they want to get out and go do things, right? But your parents are going to say that you put rules on you, right? That's kind of like entropy. They limit the amount of freedom you have on what you want to do. And so when you get older, you'll want to go out into society and party it up and go do different things. So the police will be watching you. And that's a measure. They limit the amount of freedom you have. They limit the amount of entropy that you have, which is a measure of your movement energy.
Converting the high-energy combustible material in the wood to lower-energy carbon dioxide and water. Entropy also increases and helps the reaction along because the neat, organized log of wood.
The neat, organized hydrocarbon structure of the wood can be compared to the neat, organized hydrocarbon structure of Bill Gates' mind, who, owing to the circumstances that his parents, when he was a youth, forbid television watching on school nights, took it upon himself at age 7 to read the entire World Book Encyclopedia,
is now converted into randomly moving water vapor and carbon dioxide. The energy shed by this exothermic reaction powers the endothermic reaction of cooking your dinner. Bon appetit.
This last thing right here. Watch this last part where he says
the neat, organized log of wood.
How he says the energy of this thing powers the energy from the fire powers the cooking of the hot dogs. This gives an example where you can get a new system of morals. Remember when we watched the when we watched the merman and the shellfish and the African, right? When they didn't know which one was more moral. The way the energy released from the fire cooks the hot dog is
now converted into randomly moving water vapor and carbon dioxide. The energy shed by this exothermic reaction powers the endothermic reaction of cooking your dinner.
The powering is
To interject, the point I was grasping to make in this scene, wherein the video commentator explains how the heat released from the combustion of the firewood is used to cook the hot dog, is that the phenomenon in discussion is what's called energy coupling theory, and it was discovered in the 1940s and can be used to derive a new system of morality. Specifically, it was found that what are called exergonic reactions, ex from the Greek exo meaning turning out, ergon from the Greek work, types of reactions are found to be coupled in cellular processes and social processes to what are called endergonic reactions. Endo meaning to turn inward, ergon meaning work. Therefore, endergonic reactions are energy requiring reactions. The term exergonic and endergonic, coined in 1940 by American chemist Charles Correll, who explained that the energy released, for example, in the high energy molecule ATP, otherwise known as energy currency, specifically when the 3 bonds of phosphate break, each releasing 20 kilojoules per bond, the energy is used daily inside of cells to do a number of, or perform or drive a number of energy requiring work processes, such as the shortening of myosin fiber, which is used to do muscular work in our bodies. Likewise, this laboratory scale model can be scaled up to the social phenomenon level per the logic of monism philosophy. That is, energy applies universally, cellular to the social level. So, for example, the ATP high energy molecule can be compared to the Kennedy family, one of America's most powerful families, such that the high energy bonds or familial bonds between Joseph Kennedy and his son John JFK and his three other sons, Robert, Joe Jr., and Teddy, were cleaved, just like the phosphate bonds were cleaved. And this energy was used in the 20th century to derive or coupled to a number of social work phenomenon that wouldn't normally go on their own because they were by themselves endergonic, energy requiring processes. So, for example, in 1943, John, or JFK as he's commonly known, joined the Navy during World War II, and as captain or lieutenant of his PT-109 boat, was hit by a Japanese destroyer, and his crew was scattered in the water. Kennedy, despite re-injury to his back in the collision, towed a badly burned crewman through the water with a life jacket strap clenched between his teeth. He towed the wounded man to the island and later to a second island from where his crew was subsequently rescued. During this ordeal, Kennedy took charge of the situation. He gathered his surviving crew members together in the water around the wreckage to vote on whether to fight or surrender. Kennedy stated, to quote, "There is nothing in the book about what to do in a situation like this. A lot of you have families and some of you have children. What do you want to do? I have nothing to lose." Shunning surrender, because of this speech, the man swam towards a small island and thereby were rescued instead of surrendering. This would be an example of the character of JFK from his cleavage of his exergonic high energy familial bonds driving via energy coupling a scenario of social work process that wouldn't probably normally go on its own.
I will obey God.
No.
Redo it.
You like it?
Do it again.
Alright.
Do it again.
That's all I'm going to say.
Treated.
I will obey God.
No.
Oh my God. Again.
Seriously, again.
Okay, this last time. Now we're gonna look at one more video.
And then we can see Atheism.
I will obey God.
No.
Alright, well listen. Now we're gonna...
A second point to clarify in respect to this diagram is that some may object and say that the scaling up or comparison of the ATP molecule to the Kennedy family molecule is but analogy or metaphor. This is incorrect. Just as energy scales up universally to all atomic and molecular geometries and work phenomenon, so too does the model of the cleavage of bonds scale up to the cleavage of family bonds. In other words, some may object and say that one can only define a chemical bond as that wherein two electrons are shared. In other words, a covalent bond. Correctly, however, a bond, according to Feynman, or Richard Feynman, in quantum electrodynamics, is any structure in which there is a photon-electron interaction. In other words, all chemical bonds, whether between phosphorus and oxygen or between Joseph and John, are all types of chemical bonds that can be reduced at their fundamental level to photon-electron interactions or quantum electrodynamics.
till the next one. See you guys later. Say bye-bye, Ellie.
Say some words of advice to everybody before you go.
Well, just keep an open mind and never stop learning. You see all those books in there? This guy's still learning too. He's not going to build a house with those books. He's reading them. He's picking up knowledge.
Thor's trying to say, be a free thinker. Keep thinking when people tell you things.